executive session, or out of attorney-client session, I'm sorry. Okay, that we're out of attorney-client session, back into regular session of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. The resolution at hand.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may interrupt briefly, we are now out of attorney-client session, and prior to going into attorney-client session, Mr. Jones came up to the podium and objected to the motion that had been made by some members of the committee requesting to go to executive session. There is going to be no response to the objection made by Mr. Jones, because it is my understanding that those legislators who did make the motion to go into executive session are now withdrawing it.
Thank you. County Administrator?
Thank you. I have an MOE to come before the board to renew our contract with Alfred State for economic development services. This is a contract we've had since 2016. We have been renewing them in one-year increments, and the price for this has traditionally been $110,000. You might note on the MOE that this is for $55,000. That would reflect the fact that Alfred State has traditionally assigned Dr. Clark to perform this contract. Dr. Clark's needed a little bit more at Alfred State on their campus this year, so he would expect to put in a little fewer hours. So we've reduced the price on this MOE to reflect that. Since I submitted the MOE last week, I've had further conversations with Dr. Morrow at Alfred State. I talked to him last night, so I was unable to update an MOE today to reflect that conversation. But Dr. Morrow is very sorry that his conversation with us was cut short earlier this summer. I think he'd like to have further conversations regarding this contract. At this point in time, he really would like to do that before we really commit to a term, whether it be 12 months or something else. And I don't know if we can do that between now and next week. Next week is the last board meeting you have to approve this. The contract currently runs out at the end of this month. So we probably will be looking, I would assume, to have a shorter contract than 1 year, so that we can have time to have Dr. Morrow come in and have some conversations with this board about the future of economic development. I also want to mention that this falls in line with your plan to pass the local law, which just came up earlier in this agenda, to hire a permanent employee to run economic development. The purpose of extending the contract with Alfred State was to have some overlap between the two of those, and hopefully we have someone hired while Alfred State is still under contract to have some overlap services. So that is the MOE with some updates.
So that leaves us to approve a shorter contract?
I think what you could do is just approve the MOE as written. It would still need to go next week to Ways and Means, I believe, and the full board. And if we need to make any adjustments in the term of the contract between then to allow for further conversations with Alfred State, we can do that between now and then. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Vice Chair, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I'll second that for Swell.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Legislator Healy would like to amend that contract to a term of 60 days at a prorated amount to be negotiated.
Do we have a motion to approve the second? Or to
I'll
approve
second. Hanchett seconds.
Okay, I'm at loss to this.
Yes. Yes. So now, Mr. Chairman, you have a motion in a second, so now you, so, right. Yeah. So now you need to, hold on one moment.
No different than anything else we do here, the way back. I don't think. No different.
So now they need to vote on that, on the amendment that's on the floor.
Okay, so
And they can have discussion on
we're
it.
voting on the amendment, and whether it's approved or not, then
But you
we-
can have discussion on the amendment.
Okay. Okay,
So that was
we have
six.
we have a motion and a second.
To might clarify, that was for 60 days and a prorated amount.
I'm sorry, say it again.
60 days and a prorated amount.
Okay. We've had a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I will say a few things. We have worked with Alfred State for many years. I have in many different aspects. I know when I ran for legislator, a lot of the taxpayers in my district were ready for us to go back to the change that we as a county started last year. So I would not vote yes for a 12-month. I like that we have an option for a shorter time. I think transition time is appropriate for what we need to do. So that is my discussion on that.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
seeking clarification from the back table. They amend this to a 60-day contract if it carries through to Ways and Means in the full board. There's opportunity to further amend the contract back to a longer term,
Right.
correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. That was John, Ricky opposed.
How many opposed?
Ricky.
Cyril also opposed.
Two
Clear.
opposed.
So now you have to vote on the actual motion
As amended.
as amended.
Okay. We'll go back to the original motion, which was for a year.
Oh.
And as amended, it's 60 days. All those in, first of all, do we have any more discussion? All those in favor of the original motion as amended,
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
call for a roll call.
roll call vote, okay? Would you read off the roll call, please?
Can we clarify what the, what we're voting on clearly? Is it with the amendment?
With the amendment of
Okay.
60 days as opposed to the full year.
Okay.
Prorated.
So we're
Pro-
voting on the 60 or the 12 months right now?
We're voting on the 60-day amendment as appropriated,
Prorated.
Prorated, amount.
Negotiated amount.
okay?
All right, Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Sear,
No.
Mrs. Hanchett,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
No.
Mrs. Ricketts Swales,
Yes.
and Mr. Stockin.
No.
Call. 5 ayes, 3 noes, 1 absent.
So the motion passes. As amended.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. You walked that through very well, and I do want to apologize to this committee and to the rest of the people in this room. This is the part of government that's not practiced often, is the board rules. I know poor county attorneys over there scrambling with some of these procedural questions we don't get asked often. So thank you for bearing with us as we try to figure out some of these things that we don't do often. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any old business? Hearing none, any new business? Go to the order. I'll look for a motion for adjournment.
Ricky motion.
We have a motion, looking for a second.
Kern, second?
Curran, we got a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.